Senator Cameron.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Senator Cash. In the Turnbull Government submission arguing against a fair increase in the minimum wage, it argues that, and I quote, low-paid employees are often found in high-income households. In an interview with Neil Mitchell on 3AW, the Minister at least 5 times failed to answer how many of the 200,000 people on minimum wage have a rich family to rely on. Given that she's had time to prepare, will the Minister now tell the Senate how many of the 200,000 people have a rich family to rely on?
The Minister for Employment, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Cameron for the question. And in relation to the first part of your question, I completely reject what you've stated, that the government has filed a submission that does not support an increase in the minimum wage. In relation to the very selective quote that appeared on the front page of a Fairfax newspaper this morning, can I just confirm that this is similar information that is provided each year by the government of the day, regardless of who is in power. So, for example, when you look at the submissions that were provided by the former Labor government in 2011, 2012 and 2013, each of those submissions...
Order. Pause the clock. Point of order, Senator Cameron.
This is on relevance. The Minister has answered the first part of the question. The second part of the question went to one issue. How many of the 200,000 people have a rich family to rely on? That was the question. The Minister's had time to understand and prepare.
Thank you, Senator Cameron. I will remind the Minister of the question. Minister, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. As I stated, this is information that is provided to the Fair Work Commission, regardless of who is in government. In relation to the question that Senator Cameron has asked, the question actually doesn't go to the 200,000 people who are on the minimum wage. The statistic is actually in relation to the number of low-paid employees, and in relation to that, it is just under 50%.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cameron, supplementary question.
Yep. Can the Minister further advise how many of the 200,000 workers on low wages are women, and how would a freeze in the minimum wage affect the gender pay gap?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Cameron. And in relation to the annual wage review, obviously it looks at low paid and those who are on the national minimum wage, regardless of gender. In relation to the actual impact on women, however, one of the points that the submission does make in relation to the gender pay gap is that it is often when women who are more likely to be on awards or on the minimum wage than men, there is less likely to be a gender pay gap because you are normally paid the equivalent rate as the person you are working next to if they are a man. The point that the submission makes is if you want to look at a gender pay gap, you actually have to look further up to higher paid people.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cameron, final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Why is the Turnbull Government's only advice to struggling Australians to have rich parents or marry up?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. And again, Senator Cameron, I completely reject the statement. That is not the government's advice. And as I said, in relation to the very selective quote that was made, that has been provided by government regardless of who is in power in 2011, 2012 and 2013. The former Labor government provided very similar information because, Senator Cameron, based on your history in relation to industrial relations, you would know governments in relation to the annual wage review provide to the Fair Work Commission contemporary economic data that the Fair Work Commission is then able to take into account when determining whether or not there should be an increase in the minimum wage. But the one thing we don't shy away from, and it's something that Bill Shorten did not shy away from when he was the relevant minister, was that you also need to take into account...
Point of order, Senator Cameron.
On relevance, the question I asked was consistent with what government ministers and the Prime Minister has been saying, that what you should do is get rich parents or marry up.
Order, Senator Cameron. There is no point of order. The Minister has been directly relevant and answered your question directly. The Minister is in order. Minister, you have 5 seconds. Will you conclude your answer? Minister.
There are a number of factors to take into account and we present that information to the Commission.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rice.